My name is Philip Carson, 65 years old, and I built our family home with these hands 40 years ago. Every nail, every board, holds memories of my late wife Martha. When my health took a hit after she passed, my son Marcus stepped in to handle my finances. Last week, he sold my house for $1 million without my permission and handed me a check for $5,000. He told me to go find a room in some dump outside the city. What Marcus never realized was that I had already prepared for his betrayal. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see how justice gets served when least expected. I came from nothing, really. My father was a factory worker in Pittsburgh who taught me the value of hard work. After high school, I apprenticed with a local contractor, learning every aspect of construction from the ground up. By 25, I had saved enough to start my own small construction company, Carson Building Contractors. It was tough going at first, just me and two guys taking on renovation jobs nobody else wanted. But I built a reputation for honesty and quality workmanship. When bigger contracts started coming in, I never forgot where I came from. I met Martha at a community picnic in 1978. She was serving lemonade, wearing a yellow sundress that matched her smile. She worked as a kindergarten teacher and had this natural way with people that drew them in. We dated for 9 months before I proposed on Christmas Eve with a modest ring that took me 6 months to save for. Martha cried when she saw it, not because it was small, but because she said she could feel how much love went into buying it. We got married in a small ceremony at her parents' church and moved into a tiny apartment while I continued growing my business. Those early years were tight financially, but we were rich in other ways. Martha and I tried for several years to have children. It was a heartbreaking journey through hope and disappointment. The doctors eventually told us we had unexplained infertility. We had almost given up when Martha discovered she was pregnant at 36. Our miracle baby, Marcus, was born in 1985. When Marcus was 2, business was finally stable enough for us to think about building our own home. I found 5 acres of land about 30 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. The property was perfect, nestled against woodland with a small stream running through the back. What made it even better was the adjacent 50 acres of undeveloped land that the owner was willing to sell me for a great price. I took a risk and bought all 55 acres, thinking someday it might be a good investment. I spent 2 years building our house while still running my company, working weekends and evenings with occasional help from friends in the trade. Every beam was chosen with care, every room designed with our family in mind. I included a special nursery for Marcus, with built-in bookshelves, and a window seat where Martha could read to him. I crafted a custom kitchen for Martha, with big windows, overlooking her future garden. Our bedroom had a private deck, where we could drink coffee and watch the sunrise. The basement held my workshop, and I added a separate office where I could handle business paperwork. Martha brought the house to life. She planted gardens that bloomed from early spring through fall. She painted each room with colors that made the space feel warm and inviting. She filled our home with comfortable furniture, family photos, and small treasures we collected over the years. It truly was our sanctuary, built with love and sweat and dreams. We raised Marcus in that house, surrounded by nature and family values. We tried to give him a normal childhood despite being older parents. Martha worried we might spoil him, being our only child. Looking back, perhaps we did. Marcus never had to struggle financially like I did. His clothes were always new, not hand-me-downs. He had the best toys, the best bicycle, later the nicest car among his friends. We paid for him to attend an exclusive private school when the public school wasn't challenging enough for him. Marcus was a bright kid, always quick with numbers and showing natural leadership. I remember teaching him to fish in our stream, his little face so serious as he concentrated on baiting his hook. Martha would pack picnic lunches, and we would spend whole Saturdays exploring our property. Marcus had his friends over for campouts in the backyard, their laughter carrying through the summer evenings. As he grew older, I noticed certain traits emerging that concerned me. Marcus expected things to come easily. He grew impatient when faced with challenges. When his high school basketball team lost games, he would blame the coach or his teammates. Martha was better at addressing these issues, gently guiding him toward taking responsibility. I was often too busy with work, something I deeply regret now. Despite these concerns, there were many moments of genuine connection. Marcus worked for my construction company during summer breaks in high school and college. He showed real aptitude for the business side of things, though he never took to the actual construction work. I remember the pride I felt watching him confidently present a project proposal to clients when he was just 20 years old. Martha was diagnosed with breast cancer 5 years ago. It was advanced by the time they caught it. We spent 2 years fighting that terrible disease, driving to specialists, trying treatments that seemed worse than the cancer itself. Marcus visited during the worst periods, but he was building his own real estate business by then, and often seemed distracted. Martha never complained about his absence. She said young people need to forge their own paths. My beautiful Martha passed away 3 years ago. The house that had been filled with her laughter fell silent. I wandered through rooms full of memories, lost without my partner of 42 years. Marcus attended the funeral with his new girlfriend Amanda, properly somber and supportive during the service. He stayed for 2 weeks afterward, helping me sort through practical matters. Then he returned to his life in the city, calling every Sunday like clockwork. 6 months after Martha died, I had a minor stroke. Nothing debilitating, but it scared me and apparently scared Marcus too. He insisted on taking a more active role in my financial affairs. Given my fragile health and overwhelming grief, I agreed. Marcus set up online banking for me, organized my insurance paperwork, and helped me create a new will. At 63, I was grateful for his assistance during a vulnerable time. I had no idea I was opening the door to betrayal. The changes in Marcus happened so gradually that I barely noticed them at first. After Martha passed, he began visiting more frequently, which I initially appreciated. His calls increased from once a week to several times, often discussing my finances, the maintenance costs of the house, and how I was managing alone in such a large space. I dismissed these conversations as concern for my well-being. Around this time, Marcus met Amanda through his real estate connections. She came from old money, with a family name recognized throughout Pittsburgh society. She was strikingly beautiful with expensively highlighted hair, designer clothes, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. When Marcus brought her to the house for the first time, I noticed how her gaze swept critically over our comfortable but modest furnishings. She commented on how quaint everything was, a word that felt more like an insult than a compliment. Their wedding a year later was an extravagant affair at one of the city's most exclusive venues. I felt out of place among their friends, most of whom seemed to measure success by the brands they wore and the cars they drove. Marcus had never been materialistic growing up, but now he sported custom suits, a Rolex watch, and casually mentioned his country club membership. I wondered if construction profits could support such a lifestyle, but kept my concerns to myself. After the wedding, Marcus and Amanda purchased a penthouse apartment in downtown Pittsburgh. When I visited once, I was astonished by the sleek, minimalist decor that looked straight out of a magazine but lacked any personal warmth. The mortgage on such a place must have been staggering, but when I hinted at this, Marcus quickly changed the subject. Their visits to my home became more purposeful. Marcus would walk the property, making comments about wasted space and the rising cost of maintenance. He brought up the subject of downsizing, saying things like, "Dad, you rattling around in this big house alone just does not make sense financially," or, "This place is becoming a money pit. Think about how the property taxes are eating into your retirement savings." I resisted these suggestions. My house was not just a building but the physical manifestation of my life with Martha. Every corner held memories I was not ready to part with. Besides, I was still perfectly capable of maintaining it. My stroke had been minor, and physical work had always been my therapy. Then came the day I discovered Marcus had been looking at the property records. I found paperwork he had accidentally left behind, showing the assessed value of both the house and the undeveloped 50 acres. What concerned me was that he had highlighted potential zoning changes that would allow for residential development on that land, something I had deliberately avoided despite numerous offers over the years. Marcus became increasingly impatient with my refusal to consider moving. One evening, after a dinner where he had drunk too much wine, his facade cracked. "We need to be practical here, Dad," he snapped. "You have all this valuable real estate just sitting here, while Amanda and I are working ourselves to the bone to maintain our lifestyle. As an only child, all this will be mine eventually anyway. Why not liquidate now, so we can all benefit?" I was shocked into silence. Was this really my son speaking? The boy who had once helped me plant trees along our driveway, talking about liquidating the home where he grew up? After he left that night, I sat in Martha's garden and tried to imagine what she would advise. Martha had always seen the best in Marcus. She would urge me to believe his intentions were good, even if poorly expressed. But Martha had also been practical and protective of what we had built together. The next day, Marcus called to apologize, blaming the wine and stress at work. I accepted his apology, but something had shifted in my perception. I began paying closer attention to his suggestions and requests. He started bringing up assisted living facilities, leaving brochures casually around my house. When I firmly stated I had no interest in such places, he sighed dramatically and said I was making things difficult. Things came to a head 3 months ago. Marcus arrived with a real estate agent friend who walked through my house, making notes without my permission. When I confronted them, Marcus introduced her as someone who was just giving advice on minor renovations to increase my comfort. I knew it was a lie. The woman had been measuring rooms and discussing comp values in hushed tones with Marcus when they thought I was not listening. That night, we had our first serious argument since Martha died. I told Marcus plainly that I had no intention of selling my home or moving into any facility. He accused me of being stubborn and impractical, saying my emotional attachment to the house was clouding my judgment. For the first time, I saw raw frustration on his face when he could not convince me. He left abruptly, saying he needed to think about how to handle my care going forward, as if I were an inconvenient problem rather than his father. After that confrontation, my suspicions about Marcus' motives grew stronger. Yet a part of me still resisted, believing my only son would deliberately work against my wishes. I told myself he was misguided, but well-intentioned. Perhaps the lifestyle he had built with Amanda was creating financial pressures I did not fully understand. Perhaps he truly believed he was acting in my best interest. But deep down, a voice that sounded very much like Martha whispered warnings I could no longer ignore. The first concrete sign that Marcus was moving forward with plans despite my objections came on a Tuesday morning in early spring. I was drinking coffee on my deck, enjoying the sight of daffodils Martha had planted years ago, when a black SUV pulled into my driveway. 2 men in business suits stepped out, carrying clipboards and camera equipment. They looked surprised to see me. One introduced himself as representing a development company. According to him, they had an appointment to survey the property. When I explained no such appointment existed, they showed me an email from Marcus authorizing the visit. I firmly but politely asked them to leave, which they did after awkward apologies. My hands shook as I called Marcus immediately. He answered on the first ring, his voice too casual. "Oh, they were just doing a preliminary assessment, Dad. Nothing to worry about. Just exploring options for the future." When I reminded him the property was still mine to decide about, he laughed it off. "Of course it is. I am just being proactive. You always taught me the value of planning ahead." That evening, Marcus appeared at my door, unannounced. He brought takeout from my favorite Italian restaurant and a bottle of good scotch. As we ate, he skillfully steered the conversation away from the morning incident, instead focusing on stories about my grandchildren and neighborhood gossip. But when I went to the kitchen for dessert, I returned to find him quickly tucking some papers back into his briefcase. After he left, I searched the room and found a business card that had fallen beneath the coffee table. It belonged to a lawyer specializing in estate planning and elder care. On the back was a handwritten note: "Discussed POA options, competency requirements. Follow up next week." A cold feeling settled in my stomach, as I realized Marcus was exploring ways to take control of my affairs beyond the financial help I had agreed to. The next day, I called my old friend and lawyer, Richard Thompson. We had known each other for 30 years, and he had handled all my legal matters since I started my business. When his receptionist put me through, Richard sounded genuinely pleased to hear from me. But when I started explaining my concerns about Marcus, the line suddenly went dead. When I called back, the receptionist said Richard was unavailable, but would return my call. He never did. 3 days later, Marcus showed up with lunch, and casually mentioned he had run into Richard at the golf club. "I am helping Dad update some legal paperwork," he had apparently told my friend. "Just streamlining things while he still has the energy to be involved." The message was clear. Marcus had gotten to Richard before he could call me back. Over the next few weeks, Marcus implemented subtle changes that effectively isolated me. He convinced my longtime housekeeper that her services were no longer needed, since he would be checking in more frequently. My mail began arriving already opened, with Marcus claiming he was helping organize my bills. My cell phone mysteriously malfunctioned and was replaced with a new one that I found difficult to navigate. Old contacts were missing from the address book. One day, Marcus arrived with a man he introduced as Dr. Peterson, supposedly for a routine checkup. The doctor asked odd questions about whether I got confused about dates or had trouble remembering recent events. He had me draw a clock face and count backward from 100. Later, I overheard them in the hallway, the doctor saying something about early signs of cognitive decline requiring monitoring. I realized with horror that Marcus was building a case for my incompetence. That night, alone in the house that now felt like it was closing in around me, I faced the truth I had been avoiding. My son was systematically working to gain control of my property against my wishes. If I confronted him directly, he would only accelerate his plans. I needed to be strategic, to appear compliant while secretly taking action. Martha always said I played a terrible poker face, wearing my emotions for all to see. Now I would need to give the performance of my lifetime. The next morning, when Marcus called, I deliberately slurred my words slightly and expressed confusion about what day it was. I heard the barely concealed satisfaction in his voice, as he said he would come right over. When he arrived, I shuffled around in my bathrobe despite having been fully dressed earlier, and let him find me staring vacantly at the photo album, teary-eyed and disoriented. Marcus was convinced by my act. That afternoon, he made several calls from my kitchen, speaking in hushed tones about accelerating timelines and moving forward with the documentation. While he was distracted, I pocketed my car keys and the emergency cash I kept in my workshop. I would need to move carefully now, playing the confused old man while laying groundwork for my defense. The most unexpected insight into Marcus' plans came from Amanda, of all people. She visited alone the following weekend, bringing an expensive fruit basket and her artificial sympathy. As she wandered through the house, touching Martha antique figurines with manicured fingers, she mentioned, almost casually, how the development deal would finally solve their problems. The loan on the penthouse is underwater since the market correction, she said, checking her reflection in a hallway mirror. And Marcus made some unfortunate investments last quarter. She laughed lightly. But the development company is offering cash up front for the option on this land. We will be back on our feet in no time. Her careless words confirmed everything. Their lavish lifestyle had created financial problems, and my property represented a quick solution. My son was not concerned about my well-being, but about extracting value from my home and land to solve his own problems. The betrayal cut deep, but it also strengthened my resolve to act before it was too late. The morning after Amanda's visit, I waited until Marcus left for a business meeting in the city. Then I put my plan into action. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one I had worn to Martha's funeral. I combed my hair neatly and put on the wristwatch she had given me for our 40th anniversary. If I was going to fight for our home, I wanted to feel her presence with me. My first stop was the bank where Martha and I had done business for decades. The manager, Sofia Gonzalez, had started as a teller when we opened our accounts. Her father had been one of my first employees. I trusted her, but I needed to be careful. I told the receptionist I wanted to discuss retirement planning. Once in Sophia's office with the door closed, I revealed my true concern. "Philip, this is serious," Sophia said after hearing my story. "Marcus has been in here several times requesting information about your accounts. He has shown us power of attorney paperwork, but something about it never sat right with me. That is why I have been delaying giving him full access." She pulled up my accounts on her computer, showing me recent transfers Marcus had made, ostensibly for household expenses and my medical care. The amounts were small enough not to raise immediate alarm but added up to thousands of dollars over months. When I asked about the power of attorney document, she reluctantly showed me a copy. My signature was there, but I had no memory of signing it. It looked authentic, but slightly off, like someone had traced my handwriting. Sophia recommended a lawyer who specialized in elder law, Gregory Williams. His office was across town, but she offered to call ahead and explain my situation. Before I left, I withdrew a significant amount of cash and moved some funds to a new account only I could access. If Marcus was monitoring my main accounts, this might raise red flags, but I was beyond caring about subtlety. Gregory Williams reminded me of myself at a younger age, practical and straightforward. His office was modest but professional, with none of the ostentatious displays of success that seemed to impress Marcus. After listening to my story, he asked blunt questions about my health, my relationship with my son, and the property. "Sadly, what you are describing is elder financial exploitation, and it happens far more often than people realize," he said. "The power of attorney document is particularly troubling. If you did not knowingly sign it, we are looking at potential fraud." Gregory outlined a plan of action. First, I needed to establish my mental competence beyond any doubt. He referred me to a geriatric specialist, unconnected to Marcus, for a complete cognitive assessment. Second, I needed to document everything happening around me, including conversations with Marcus. Third, we would secure my most valuable assets and papers immediately. The cognitive assessment was scheduled for 2 days later. In the meantime, I returned home and implemented Gregory's advice. I purchased a small digital recorder and kept it in my pocket whenever Marcus visited. I installed a simple security camera system, telling the technician it was because I had seen suspicious cars in the neighborhood. I gathered my important documents, property deeds, insurance policies, Martha jewelry, and our most precious family photographs, securing them in a safe deposit box Gregory had arranged. One document in particular needed protection: the deed to the 50 acres adjacent to my house. Years ago, after consulting with Martha, I had placed that land in a separate conservation trust. We both loved the undeveloped woodland and wanted it preserved, not turned into another housing development. Marcus knew about the 5 acres our house stood on, but had no idea about the legal status of the larger parcel. This would be my ace in the hole if things went badly. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the geriatric specialist, conducted a thorough 3-hour assessment. The tests were exhaustive, examining everything from my memory and reasoning to my emotional health and daily functioning ability. At the end, she sat with me to discuss the results. "Mr. Carson, your cognitive function is above average for your age group," she said firmly. "There are absolutely no indicators of dementia or any other condition that would impair your decision-making capacity." She provided detailed written documentation of her findings and agreed to testify if necessary about my competence. Armed with this report, I met again with Gregory. We created a new legitimate power of attorney, naming him as my representative in case of actual incapacity. We filed legal notices revoking any previous powers of attorney. He helped me draft a new will with explicit provisions about the house and surrounding property. Most importantly, we prepared a cease and desist letter regarding any attempts to sell or develop my property without my explicit consent. During this time, I maintained my act around Marcus. I shuffled more, forgot small details in our conversations, and appeared increasingly vague about financial matters. I could see him growing more confident, less careful about hiding his actions. He began bringing more people to the house: contractors, designers, and prospective buyers disguised as medical professionals or service providers. I learned through one of these visitors, a landscape architect, who mistakenly showed me plans for subdividing my property, that Marcus had scheduled a meeting with the development company for the following week. They were prepared to offer $1 million for the entire 55 acres, with plans to build an exclusive gated community. The house would be demolished. Martha Gardens, the stream where I had taught Marcus to fish, the trees we had planted together, all would be bulldozed in the name of progress and profit. That night, I sat on the deck Martha and I had built together, looking out over our land in the fading light. Fireflies blinked in the meadow grass. An owl called from the woods beyond. This place had been our sanctuary, our legacy. I thought about all the work these hands had done, creating a home that was meant to shelter generations of our family. Now my own son wanted to sell it out from under me for a quick payday. I felt anger rising, hot and righteous. But beneath it was a deeper, more painful emotion, the heartbreak of betrayal by my own child. What had I done wrong as a father, that money meant more to Marcus than family legacy? How had I failed to instill the values Martha and I held dear? Or was it the world that had changed around us, teaching a different set of priorities to the next generation? These questions had no easy answers, but one thing was clear: I would not go quietly. This house, this land, represented not just my past but my present and future. I had built it with my own hands, and I would fight with everything I had to protect it, not just for myself, but for the memory of Martha and the values we had tried to pass on. The next morning, I called Gregory and told him to implement the final phase of our plan. It was time to spring the trap I had carefully laid. If Marcus wanted a fight, he would get one, but not the one he expected, and he would learn that underestimating his old man had been his biggest mistake. 2 weeks later, I returned home from my weekly therapy appointment, a legitimate session I had started after Martha passed. As I turned into the driveway, I noticed 3 unfamiliar cars parked in front of the house. The front door stood open, and voices drifted out onto the porch. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. This moment required all my self-control. I shuffled inside, maintaining my recently adopted persona of confusion and frailty. The living room was filled with strangers in business attire, examining the built-in bookshelves I had crafted by hand. Marcus stood in the center of the room, gesturing expansively as if he already owned the place. He faltered briefly when he saw me, then recovered with a too bright smile. "Dad, you are home early. I was just showing these folks around. This is Mr. Bryce from Summit Development and his associates. They are very interested in the property." Marcus' voice had that overly loud, slow quality people sometimes use with children or the elderly. I blinked owlishly, playing my part. "Property? What property?" I asked, injecting confusion into my voice. Mr. Bryce, a sleek man in an expensive suit, stepped forward with a practiced smile. Your lovely home, Mr. Carson. Your son has told us all about how you are looking to downsize. We are prepared to make a very generous offer. Before I could respond, Marcus smoothly interrupted. Dad, remember we talked about this? The big house is too much for you now. These nice people are going to take good care of it, and you will have money for a comfortable retirement. He placed a hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward a chair, as if I might collapse at any moment. For the next hour, I sat quietly, watching the betrayal unfold. The development team measured rooms, discussed demolition timelines, and debated where to position new luxury homes once mine was razed. They spoke about me in the third person, as if I were already gone. Marcus alternated between appeasing me with vague reassurances and engaging enthusiastically in planning discussions. Eventually, they gathered around the dining table, where Marcus produced a stack of documents. I recognized property transfer papers, already filled out with my name. Mr. Bryce slid a check across the table to Marcus. $1 million for the entire 55 acres, a price far below market value but enough to solve Marcus' financial problems. Is everything in order with the power of attorney? Mr. Bryce asked quietly, glancing at me with mild concern. Marcus nodded confidently. Completely legal. My father has been experiencing cognitive decline. His doctor has confirmed it. I have full authority to act on his behalf. He has good days and bad days, but the documentation is solid. Mr. Bryce seemed satisfied. The company attorney reviewed the paperwork and gave a nod of approval. Hands were shaken. Backs were patted. The deal was done, or so they thought. They had just purchased a property from someone who had no legal right to sell it. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. The development team left, promising to begin preliminary work within the week. Marcus remained behind, his face flushed with triumph and relief. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with an envelope, which he tossed casually onto the coffee table in front of me. Your share, Dad, he said, unable to keep the dismissive tone from his voice. $5,000. Enough for a deposit on a nice little apartment in one of those senior communities we looked at. You should be grateful I am handling all this stress and paperwork for you. Go buy yourself a room in some dump outside the city. I will have someone come pack your things tomorrow. I picked up the envelope with trembling hands, though my tremor was from rage rather than age. $5,000. My son had sold my home, my life work, for $1 million, and deemed me worthy of 0.5%. The callousness stunned me, even after everything that had happened. Thank you, son, I said softly, pocketing the check. You have always looked out for me. My voice nearly broke on the lie, but I maintained my facade of docile acceptance. Just a few more hours of this charade. Marcus seemed surprised and relieved by my compliance. His shoulders relaxed as he poured himself a congratulatory scotch from my cabinet. We should celebrate, he announced. I will call Amanda, and we will take you out to dinner. A proper goodbye to this old place. Dinner was an excruciating affair. We sat at the upscale restaurant Marcus had selected, Amanda dripping in jewelry that I suspected they could not afford. They ordered champagne and expensive entrees, talking excitedly about their plans for the windfall. The development company had already paid a non-refundable deposit of $200,000, which Marcus had used to clear some of his most pressing debts. You know what, Dad? Marcus said, loosened by his third glass of champagne. I always hated that house. It was so important to you and Mom, but to me it was just the place where I was never good enough. Not cut out for construction like you. Not as caring as Mom. That property is my inheritance, and I decided to claim it on my terms. Amanda laughed. A brittle sound like breaking glass. Besides, she added, the place is so dated. Those gardens your mother was so proud of. All those old-fashioned flowers. And that awful kitchen with the farm sink. She wrinkled her nose. Everything would have needed gutting anyway. Each word was a knife twisting in my heart. I thought of Martha lovingly tending her cottage garden, the kitchen where she had taught Marcus to bake cookies, the memories that permeated every corner of our home. But I swallowed my pain and played my part. I nodded vaguely, pushed food around my plate, and occasionally made non-committal sounds of agreement. As the evening wore on, I allowed tears to form in my eyes, staring distantly at nothing in particular. Marcus noticed and misinterpreted my emotion as sad acceptance. For the first time that evening, his expression softened slightly. Look, Dad, it is for the best, he said, awkwardly patting my hand. The house was falling apart anyway. You will be much happier somewhere more manageable, I promise. I seized the opportunity his momentary guilt provided. Could I maybe stay one more week in the house? I asked, making my voice small and uncertain, just to say goodbye properly. To pack my own things. Marcus exchanged a glance with Amanda, who rolled her eyes, but nodded slightly. Fine, he sighed. 1 week. Then the contractors start demolition preparation. I will come by tomorrow to start organizing the process. That night, back in my house, I stood in each room, touching the walls I had built, remembering the life Martha and I had shared there. But unlike previous nights, I did not weep. Instead, I felt a grim determination hardening within me. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning Marcus was not prepared for. I slept soundly for the first time in months, ready to reclaim what was mine. Marcus and Amanda arrived promptly at 9 the next morning, bringing moving boxes and a young man Marcus introduced as their intern who would help pack. I greeted them calmly, offering coffee, which they declined, eager to begin the process of erasing my existence from the home I had built. You will need to decide quickly what you want to keep, Dad, Marcus said, his tone businesslike. The apartment we found for you is quite small. 200 square feet, kitchenette, shared bathroom down the hall. But the location is decent for the price point. I nodded placidly. Actually, I have some paperwork for you to review first. Some insurance forms I found. I shuffled to the dining room table where a folder lay prominently displayed. Marcus sighed with poorly concealed impatience but followed me. When we were all seated, I opened the folder and pushed a document across to Marcus. Please read this carefully, son. I think you will find it informative. Marcus glanced at the paper, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion. Dad, what is this? Some kind of survey map? Indeed it is, I replied, my voice suddenly firm and clear. It shows the exact boundaries of our property. The house sits on a 5-acre parcel, with its own separate deed. The additional 50 acres that you sold to Summit Development is a completely different property, legally speaking. Amanda leaned forward, frowning. What are you talking about? The sale was for the entire property. I smiled and removed another document from the folder. This is the deed to the house, and immediate 5 acres, in my name alone. And this, I continued, sliding forward another paper, is documentation showing that the 50 acres you sold to Summit Development was placed in a conservation trust 20 years ago by your mother and me. It cannot be developed. Ever. The color drained from Marcus' face as he scanned the documents. This cannot be right, he muttered. The development company did their due diligence. Their lawyers checked everything. Did they check with me? I asked pointedly. The actual owner of the property? Or did they rely on fraudulent paperwork you provided, Marcus? Like the power of attorney you forged? Amanda gasped. Marcus, what is he talking about? She grabbed the papers, her manicured nails crumpling the edges as her eyes darted across the legal language. I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. The Conservation Trust was created in your mother's name, to preserve the woodland and stream for future generations. The land cannot be sold, developed, or altered in any way. It is protected in perpetuity. Martha and I made that decision together, long before you decided our home was your ATM machine. Marcus' face contorted with anger. You are bluffing, he spat. This is just some senile attempt to interfere with my rightful inheritance. The deal is done. I have the legal authority to act for you. I reached into the folder again and withdrew Dr. Chen assessment. According to multiple medical professionals, I am perfectly competent to manage my own affairs. I removed another document, and this is the nullification of any power of attorney you claim to have, filed with the county last week. And finally, I pulled out a police report. This is a formal complaint of elder abuse and fraud, naming you as the perpetrator. The silence that followed was absolute. Amanda stared at Marcus, her expression cycling through shock, horror, and fury. Marcus himself seemed to shrink in his chair, his previous confidence evaporating as the magnitude of his situation became clear. You set me up, he finally whispered. You pretended to be confused, to go along with everything. You tricked me. Just as you tried to trick me, I responded evenly. The difference is, I acted to protect what is legally mine. You committed fraud, Marcus. And Summit Development is about to discover they paid $200,000 for land they cannot develop, land they do not actually own. I imagine their lawyers will be quite interested in how that happened. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. I checked my watch. Right on time. Amanda, looking shell-shocked, went to answer it. She returned with Gregory Williams and 2 police officers. Mr. Williams explained the situation to the officers while Marcus sat frozen, his dreams of financial salvation crumbling before his eyes. The officers reviewed the documentation, particularly the fraudulent power of attorney and the records of financial exploitation. Marcus Carson, you are under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, and financial exploitation, the older officer stated formally, removing handcuffs from his belt. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they led Marcus away, Amanda remained behind, tears of rage streaming down her face. You have ruined everything, she hissed at me. We needed that money. The penthouse is underwater. His business is failing. Do you know what this will do to our reputation? I regarded my daughter-in-law calmly. The same thing fraud charges will do to yours, I expect. Unless you want to be charged as an accessory, I suggest you cooperate fully with the investigation. Gregory can explain your options. She stared at me with naked hatred before grabbing her designer purse and storming out of the house. I knew in that moment I would likely never see her again. One more family connection severed by greed. When only Gregory and I remained, I sank into my favorite armchair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation ebbed away, leaving behind a profound sadness. We won, I said quietly, but it does not feel like victory. Gregory sat across from me, his expression sympathetic. It rarely does in these cases, but you protected yourself and what belongs to you. That counts for something. I nodded, looking around the home that was still mine. The walls that would not be demolished, the gardens that would not be bulldozed. I had saved my house, but lost my son. Perhaps I had lost him long before today, but the finality of it hit me hard. What happens now? I asked. Gregory explained that Marcus would likely face serious charges, though as a first-time offender with good legal representation, he might avoid lengthy prison time. Summit Development would certainly sue him for fraud and misrepresentation. His real estate license would probably be revoked. The financial and professional consequences would be severe and lasting. And as for me, I would keep my home. The Conservation Trust would continue to protect the 50 acres of woodland. My financial independence was secure. But the family I had worked so hard to create was irrevocably broken. That evening, after Gregory left, I walked the boundaries of my property alone. The setting sun filtered through the trees Martha and I had planted decades ago. Somewhere in the woods, a whippoorwill called, its melancholy song echoing my own emotions. I had won the battle, but at terrible cost. I thought of Marcus as a small boy, fishing in the stream, his face lighting up when he caught his first trout. I remembered teaching him to hammer nails, his little tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. Where had that child gone? When had money become more important than family, than integrity, than love? Had I contributed to that transformation through some failure of parenting, or was it the result of forces beyond my control? These questions had no easy answers, but I knew I would have to find a way forward. Not just for myself, but for the legacy Martha and I had created in this place. A legacy that now seemed destined to end with me. The first weeks after Marcus' arrest were the hardest. The story made local news, the salacious details of a son attempting to defraud his elderly father capturing public interest. Neighbors brought casseroles and offered sympathetic ears, but their well-intentioned support often felt like pity. I withdrew into the solitude of my home, grateful for its shelter, but acutely aware of its emptiness. 3 months after the arrest, Marcus accepted a plea deal, avoiding jail time but receiving 5 years probation, community service, and mandatory financial restitution. His real estate license was revoked. The judgments against him from Summit Development and other creditors would take decades to repay. Amanda filed for divorce before the sentencing was complete, unwilling to hitch her future to a disgraced, financially ruined man. I did not attend the court proceedings. Gregory kept me informed of developments, but I could not bear to sit in a courtroom and watch my son publicly branded a criminal, even though his actions had earned the label. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life, finding purpose beyond the betrayal that had nearly cost me everything. The Conservation Trust became my first project. Working with local environmental groups, I expanded the protected status to include educational programs. School children now visit regularly to learn about native ecosystems. Walking those woodland trails with young people eager to identify birds and trees brought a joy I had thought lost forever. 6 months after Marcus' arrest, I received a letter from him. It sat unopened on my desk for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. The message inside was what you might expect, a mixture of apology, explanation, and plea for understanding. He wrote about the financial pressures, the lifestyle Amanda demanded, the business investments that had gone wrong. He claimed he had intended to give me more than the $5,000 eventually. He said he missed his mother, and me, and our home. I wrote back a short note acknowledging receipt but making no promises. The breach of trust was too severe for quick forgiveness. Actions have consequences, as I had taught him from childhood. These were his to bear. Yet, as summer turned to fall, and the maple trees along our driveway blazed with color, I found my anger gradually giving way to a more complex emotion, a sadness tinged with the faintest glimmer of hope. Not for reconciliation, not yet, but for understanding. What had happened between us was not simply one-man greed but the result of choices made by both of us over many years. I had been so focused on building a business, creating financial security, that perhaps I had failed to build an equally strong foundation of values. Had I shown Marcus that success was measured in dollars rather than character? Had my pride in providing material advantages overshadowed the importance of integrity and empathy? Martha had tried to balance these lessons, but after her death, what examples had I set? These reflections led me to a decision. The 5-acre parcel where our house stood was more than I needed. Working with city planners and a non-profit housing organization, I subdivided the property, keeping 1 acre with the house for myself, and dedicating the remaining 4 acres to affordable senior housing. 6 small, high-quality cottages were built, each with accessibility features and modest gardens. I named the community Martha Gardens. The project gave me purpose and connected me with others facing the challenges of aging. Several residents were estranged from family or had experienced elder abuse themselves. We formed a support group that met weekly in my workshop, now converted to a community space. Sharing our stories, I found healing in the knowledge that my experience, painful as it was, could help others navigate their own family difficulties. Through this work, I connected with advocacy groups, fighting elder abuse and financial exploitation. I began speaking at community centers and senior residences about recognizing warning signs and protecting assets. My construction background proved useful in helping seniors modify their homes for aging in place, an alternative to the assisted living facilities that had featured in Marcus' plans for me. 1 year after the arrest, I received another letter from Marcus. He was living in a small apartment across the state, working an entry-level job at a hardware store. The humility in his words seemed genuine this time. He asked if he might visit, not to ask forgiveness, but simply to see me. After consultation with my support group and considerable soul-searching, I agreed to a meeting on neutral ground. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. The man who walked through the door was almost unrecognizable from the polished real estate agent who had tried to sell my house. Marcus had lost weight, his designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a work shirt. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by lines of weariness and regret. For 2 hours, we talked cautiously, avoiding both recrimination and false reconciliation. He told me about his job, his small apartment, his efforts to make restitution payments. I shared stories about Martha Gardens and my advocacy work. We were like distant acquaintances finding points of connection, the father-son relationship too damaged to acknowledge directly. As we parted, Marcus asked hesitantly if we might meet again in a few months. I said yes, surprising myself with the readiness of my answer. Not because I had forgiven or forgotten, but because holding on to anger served no purpose for either of us. Martha would have wanted me to leave room for growth and change, even after such a profound betrayal. 2 years have now passed since the day Marcus tried to sell my home. The legal issues are largely resolved, though he will be paying financial penalties for years to come. We meet quarterly for lunch, our relationship slowly rebuilding on new, more honest foundations. He volunteers at Martha Gardens, helping with maintenance and yard work, interacting respectfully with residents who know his history, but choose to give him a chance to demonstrate change. My home remains my sanctuary, filled with memories of Martha and the life we built together. I have made some concessions to age, installing grab bars in the bathroom and a chairlift for the stairs. But I rise each morning in the bedroom where Martha and I shared our lives, look out over the gardens she planted, and feel gratitude for this place that remains mine. The development company eventually found another property to build their luxury homes, farther from the city but without the complications my land presented. I occasionally drive past the construction and feel a complex mixture of emotions, vindication mingled with awareness of how differently things might have turned out. What have I learned from all this? That trust, once broken, can never be fully restored, but that does not mean relationships must end. That forgiveness is not a single act, but a daily choice, beneficial primarily to the one doing the forgiving. That aging brings vulnerability, but need not bring powerlessness. That the homes we build with our hands matter less than the values we build with our lives. I do not know what the future holds for Marcus and me. The damage done cannot be undone, but perhaps something new can grow in its place, something more honest, if less ideal, than the father-son relationship I once envisioned. What I do know is that I am at peace with my decisions, both in defending what was mine and in leaving room for possible reconciliation. So what would you do if faced with betrayal by someone you love? Would you fight as I did, or find another path? Would you leave room for redemption after justice had been served? These are questions each person must answer for themselves. I only know that in my case, maintaining my dignity and independence, while eventually offering a chance at reconciliation, has brought me a measure of peace I never thought possible in the aftermath of such betrayal. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more experiences from a life long lived. Share your thoughts in the comments below about family trust and forgiveness, about whether you think reconciliation after betrayal is possible. Remember that our greatest strength often comes from how we respond to life's worst moments. Thank you for listening, and may you find wisdom for your own journey in the lessons of mine.